All right, June 11th, 2024. Podcast in session. This is the first podcast we've done in a long time, and we're changing our format again because it's called dissatisfaction. Things don't go the way I want them to go, so we have to figure out a new route, right? And after talking to my consultant, aka my daughter, we should be calling this my daughter's podcast, because what I'm doing is not working. What I'm doing is basically failing. And sometimes I'll go to her. She's 30 now, and I'm asking her questions because I figure she's smart. I raised her, right? She is someone that I actually trust her opinion. And, you know, she's a little harsh. She doesn't think a lot of my stuff is funny, which that's just the way it is. You shouldn't have people around you that always say, oh, you're the greatest, you're the funniest, right? So fine, I'm going to go with her suggestions, which is number one, let's film these podcasts. Now, we're in a bad situation here. We have moved. We have brought ourselves into a situation where there's less space. So now I'm in a garage, and this podcast will be limited to how much I can take of the heat right now. And right now it's probably 82, which is not too bad because we've had some rainfall. But there's nothing coming through. There's no breeze. We're in a very unfriendly sound atmosphere. You can hear the echoing because we are, again, in a rush. My whole life is in a rush because what I've been doing is trying to not do as much. You know, I'm trying to party too much. I'm trying to relax too much. I'm not focusing on, like, this is the job. This is the job, right? And I keep waiting for the job to appear. This is the job. The job is the podcast. The job is to make this podcast as good as I can make it. So I have to spend more time soundproofing this place, making sure there's some type of air conditioning or at least better weather for me to survive longer than 20 minutes in here, because I'm going to start to drip very soon. This rag is not for me. If you can't see the rag because you're not watching the video podcast and just listening to the audio, it's a green lime rag that I use for multiple things, whether it's my face, my car, or my camera. All things with C. Carmen, camera, and car. Anyway, I can get way off track too. And again, my daughter's like, try to stay on track here. Try to stay on track. Don't go so far off where you get lost yourself and then the people become bored. So we have written down some topics, which I usually don't care to do because I feel like it's better if it just comes off the top of my head in a natural flow. But where's my mind taking me? So I have to reel it in a little bit. So we have the rag for my sweat, that's what I was talking about, and for the camera, in case the camera started fogging up because the camera's been living in luxury in a beautiful 70 degrees air-conditioned walk-in closet, and I brought it out to this very oppressive garage heat. So the camera's suffering as well, and the lens gets foggy, and I had to wipe the lens down and actually had to let the camera kind of, ferment in the garage to acclimate to the conditions that we're in right now. So it looks like it's okay, but if you see that the picture on this pod is probably not as sharp as it should be, it's because of the weather, right? All right, so today is June 11th, 2024, and we've been doing quite a few different things in our life. Right? We moved. We've had the podcast for a long time, and where we had the podcast was a much bigger space, and we had a couple other hosts. You know, I'm an independent person. I've always been better by myself because I don't have to rely on anyone else to show up. It's not the best formula, folks. No business can run without other people, but podcasts can. Podcasts can actually be just you. You don't need a ton of employees. You don't need a cameraman. You don't need an audio guy. Like, I went a little haywire. I bought all this equipment. I bought all these arms with mics on them. I'm looking like the Joe Rogan Experience, looking like it, right? The cash of the Joe Rogan Experience is not happening. And, it's simpler just to settle up yourself. Now, if you ever reach Joe Rogan level, sure. Get yourself some producers and get yourself some air conditioning and get yourself the rest of it. But now it's grassroots again. We're back to grassroots. So this podcast has evolved, right? It's back to me. I was doing what we were calling the CIRICILLO. Again, why do I need a fancy word? It's just me doing the pod, talking about things. First of all, I don't think that anything is important unless you're talking about life and death, right? I don't think that a lot of the things that we discuss in this world are that important. To me, the most important thing is, are my kids okay? Am I okay? Am I healthy? Is the world okay? Right? If those things are, if we have that, if we have good everything that I just said, good weather, and when I say good weather, rain can be good weather. What I mean by bad weather is nuclear apocalypse. You know, the sun's blotted out from the sky. So anything other than a nuclear apocalypse, if it's raining, snowing, windy, that's good weather. That's weather. We love that weather. And if you're alive, if you're enjoying your life, if you're a fully functional human, you have a lot to really be happy for. So that's the important stuff, right? The non-important stuff is what seems to be consuming a lot of people because they forget the big picture. Now, I've been teaching a construction school for a long time with humor. Let's not get off track here. We can talk about that also. But the whole idea is that I've been saying things about, even when it comes to whether it's in construction school and life or on the podcast, we all get kind of bogged down with what they call task saturation. Task saturation, right? Too technical for a comedy podcast. If this is comedy, I don't know. You tell me. Task saturation is where you think too much about the little picture and you're not too concerned about the big picture, right? You got a fully functional roof over your house, but there's a tiny leak, and all you can think about is the leak, that tiny little drop that's landing harmlessly on your floor. But you got a roof over your head, right? So that's what we're talking about. Remember the big picture, which is life. So I'm pretty happy with a lot that's going on. So for me to talk about anything of consequence would be too serious for me, because there is not that much consequence. Life is good. Life is pretty damn good. So let's kind of embrace that. So for me, the things that have been going on, other than the very important things, the move, right? We moved. People move. You want to move in this country, you're able to move, folks. You know, if you want to go from Cleveland, Ohio, and you want to go to Los Angeles, and then you want to live in Iowa, and then you want to go back to Cleveland, then you want to go to, this is all possible. How amazing is it that we can go wherever we want to go? You know, there's a lot of, I guess, anxiety bogged up in people. I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I should. If you have an inkling of doing anything, you should do it. Any inkling that you have of doing anything, you should do it, right? Because the inkling is your thought. Take that tiny, tiny thought, and how did that occur? You know, we call it an inkling. I'm pretty sure that's the standard term for this. It's a thought that is small and it kind of bites you out of nowhere. Oh yeah, I should go to Italy, right? It's very easy to say. Now try to produce the trip to Italy, much more difficult, only because it's up here in the head. It's not difficult in the world anymore. Yeah, you have to have the means, right, to do it. And let's just say that you can get the means to do just about anything you want. You cannot get the means to produce another arm. You cannot get the means, you know, if I had the means to produce a little hair on my forehead, I might try that, but I don't have the means. I have the means to make money. I have the means to travel. I have, even if it's in the simplest of forms, say it's not Italy, but I want to travel. I have legs. I have a way to go. I have a bike at the very lowest levels, because what I'm hearing as I'm speaking are counter arguments that are not even happening in this room. I just feel like, because the world is full of arguers and correctors, that as you're speaking all the time now you've been trained to get ready for a debate. So let's skip that whole part and just say, yes, you got the means. You can go to Italy. The inkling of, I want to do something. I want to make a podcast. Okay, well, what is holding people back? That's the whole thing. That's the most interesting thing in the world, is the psychology of you. Humans. Why do we do things and why don't we do things? And see, when you untap that, when you say, oh, the reason I'm not doing this is because I have some type of concern, and that concern, if I think about it enough, like if I want to go to Italy and the concern is I'm not going to get through customs because they're going to arrest me. Well, that's a big fear because you've heard of people getting arrested, right? So you put something weird in your head like that, and you think, well, what if I get arrested? What if I get trapped in Italy? I don't have a lawyer. What if... I know this is probably not your inklings, and then I don't speak Italian, so even if I do have a lawyer, he's not going to understand me. And what's it going to cost for me to get a lawyer in Italy, like in Venice? Because I was in Venice and something happened, right? I don't know what could happen. Maybe I touched the water in the wrong way, like, you know, I jumped in a canal. I shouldn't have been jumping in the canal. It's illegal to jump in a canal, but it looks so cool to jump in a canal. Okay, this shit's not going to happen. Where are you coming up with this? How is your mind, the way your mind is creating these scenarios that are blocking you from doing things are the same things when you have the other side, the positive scenarios or the inklings. You see that? You see, you have an inkling to do something which could be great, which is, I'm going to go to Italy. Or you have this inkling on the negativity. It could be scary and bad. I could go to jail. Or what if I get lost in Italy? I can't find my way out. What if I lose my passport and they won't let me come home? Well, I just decorated my garage, right? So all these things stop people from doing things, right? So we've moved from a house to a condo, and I had an inkling. I had this thought, right? And the thought started getting larger and larger and larger. And the thought was, well, we made some money on the house. We should get rid of it. Save that money. We don't need such a big house. Maybe we should use that money to do other things, because I don't have excess cash. I have a lot of the cash trapped in the house. So if we take some of that money and use it to go on a trip to Italy, right? And we did. We went to Italy. So those things pan out. Now, selling the house and leaving it comes with the negativity side, where you start thinking, I won't have enough space. I'll have to do my podcast in an unair-conditioned garage. I'm going to have to fight for privacy because I had a bigger place and now it's a smaller place. So all these other things occur, right? All these other thoughts, which are not really fears. They're realities. So the reality is, can I solve it? Can I solve living in a smaller space? Can I not be so, I guess, spoiled? What can I get used to living in this small space and being able to handle, something that I wasn't able to handle before, right? I'm just looking at myself on the camera now, which I can see. I have the rag here and my shorts are showing. We're gonna have to work on the setup a little better of this podcast, right? But that's also part of this, the negative side of making this move. I was set, folks. I had lined myself up. I was in a spot. I got secure. I put my roots down. But you have to understand something. I don't think we were meant to plant our roots so deeply, right? I think that there is a progress in a man's life that you've got to follow. You have no choice but to follow this. Let me look at my clock here. We're at 14 minutes. Okay, so we're not overwhelming you. We have to have a clock. The clock is, and if you think about it, because I do think about these things deeply. Well, why was I so happy as a kid? As a kid, you were kept moving, right, through school systems and different size schools. You had the elementary, then the middle, then the high, and then if you went to college, and then you stopped moving, really. Some people got a job, and all of a sudden the goal was 30 years, 40 years at this job. What? How is that great? How is that when you're dead for 200 years and someone looks back on your life and goes, what did that guy do? Or even if you could just be awakened from your dead sleep 200 years into the future and they say, Now, is there anything you would have done differently since you've been dead 200 years? Have you thought about, would you have stayed at that fucking job for 30 years? See, that's the emotion that just came out. Because it bothers me. Yeah, that's what they're telling everybody to do, and that seems like that's the system that we got. We have this system. And that's one system that works well, just like the system of a large house. It worked well, right? I had it down pat. I knew my way home. But, if you would have taken a aerial view of where I went and what I've done, you would have seen that if we drew lines from me leaving the house to going to the store back to the house, or me leaving the house going to the airport back to the house, it would have been just dark lines, right? Not single little lines going to Italy, not single little lines trying Australia, because I have never been to Australia. I've never been to British Columbia. I've never been to Cozumel, right? So all those lines don't even exist, but I have a whole bunch of thick, dark, heavy font lines in one friggin' spot. In this one neighborhood in Florida. I think that if you had the ability and the frame of mind and the whatever these words are, whatever these big words are, the acuity, the intellect of saying, wow, I should have just that one day taken that one line and went to, I don't know, the Grand Canyon for starters. Or maybe just leave the county. We've spent so much time in this one area. It's a system. It works. But is that what we're supposed to do? Is that what we're supposed to do? So I am struggling on a daily basis, and I think it's for the best. The struggle is making me understand that I'm not just doing the comfortable. I'm not doing the same. The struggle makes me believe that every inkling that I have, a little tiny spark that says, why don't you try this? And I'll give you some examples of my newest things I'd like to try. Getting a storage unit. And I've always thought about this. So this is an old inkling. Filling it with cool shit. Like, you see the stuff behind me? This is typically me, right? I buy a lot of Batman stuff. I got a record player. I got some cassettes. This is nothing expensive. It's just I happen to like certain things and how they look and what they represent. It had nothing to do with money. It's just stuff that when I look at it, it just puts me in a spot that makes me feel good about what it reminds me of, right? So the Batman stuff is not just the show Batman. It's not just Adam West. It's the Batmobile too. That is a damn cool car, right? And the idea of who Batman is, you know, somebody who's interested in taking care of business when there's trouble, or that is relied on. Now, he's tall. He's you know, the good Batman, Christian Bale, right? It's not Adam West. Adam West was my kid Batman, but the adult Batman for me was Christian Bale. And to look at him and say, you know, with the cape on and the whole works, this is the ultimate, right, of what men could be. Superheroes. That's all we really know as a human species. We don't know beyond this. You know, you can watch a comedian on stage, you know, this guy was a superhero for 45 minutes, an hour. It's a show, it's an act, right? So is Batman, but it still kind of elicits that same identification with something positive, like, oh, if I could be like that, right? And typically, I think that's what we're striving to do, but once we reach this perfection of anything, this house that we have, this lifestyle that we have, if we don't put ourselves into an uncomfortable position, at least for me, it makes me think I could do more, which makes me also believe that since I'm not doing more, that I'm not happy with myself, because my whole goal, my mission statement, you know, I'm not a corporation, but I've heard this is what a mission statement is. What you got to keep reminding yourself, why am I here? Why am I doing this? So one of my inklings, you buy more stuff. What am I going to do with that stuff? Well, I want to own a lot of the stuff for my own personal use, also to protect it, also maybe to get it to some other people. Do you like the Batman stuff? Do you like Batmobiles? The Batarang, right? The Bat mask? Do you like that shit? kind of cool, right? And then to be around people who can give you an insight too on why do we like this so much. Very interesting. You know, there's people that talk about certain topics. Now, this is not my only topic. It's part of the inkling of buying and selling, which is, again, some of that's tied to money, but a lot of it is not. So, yeah. Another inkling was where we're at right now. I'm the youngest person. I know you're looking at me going, what? What is he talking about? Youngest person in my condo complex. I'm younger than a lot of these people. They're very old. They can barely walk. I love it, right? Because I have freedom in here, right? They're not taking up a lot of what we all paid for. Like, we paid for this big space, but they don't use the space. It's kind of like when you go to a mall and it's empty. Like, some people don't like an empty mall. Me, oh man, you got the whole mall to yourself. That is really, again, a dream scenario where you have something. Why do you think people buy these big houses or hundreds of acres of property, or they want to fly privately? No matter what anyone says to you, people want something for themselves only. That's why everything that's related to class status is much more expensive, but separates you from the masses. You know, the people who pay whatever the coach fee versus the first class fee versus the private airplane fee. See, where can I get first class where nobody else wants it, right? And I think that's what I look for. And that's where the least people are using some type of product, service, or area. So stairwells, I've talked about stairwells before on previous podcasts. Nobody likes to use the stairwell. If you're on a stairwell, it's yours. Yeah, I know it's harder, right? It's not the elevator, it's not this gliding lift up. And if you got stuff in your hand, if you're wearing high heels, sure. But the stairwell, magnificent, right? It's again an area that's all yours for that moment. And what do we really need? Like, there's been some discussion that you don't own anything, you just kind of borrow it until you're gone. It's true. There's some trees out here that have been here longer than I have that I don't own. I claim to own it because I'm on this piece of property, but they're not my trees. And when I'm gone, those trees will be there, and it's very tough to think like that. So don't think like that. Don't put yourself in that pattern of thought. Think about, while you're here, it's your stairwell. Be in the present moment. It's your community if nobody's using it. If you're the only one on this, I have this little 60 condo enclave, and nobody's ever using the pool. So it's my pool. While I'm in it, it's my pool. Of course, you must adjust to if someone else shows up. But, see, this used to happen to me at the house that we had with a pool. It was always just me, and then there was nobody in the pool, which was worse because we're spending all this money operating a pool. We have a pool. It costs money to build, to operate, to buy, to maintain, and then nobody's using it. That's worse for me than stealing moments of being by myself at my pool without anybody else, or in my street. Or even if, you know, the guy next door, he hasn't been here for 6 months, he's in the hospital. It's not the way you want it to go. I understand that, but there's nobody next to me. There's nobody using the street. Like, I found a spot where I'm first class. This is first class. First class meaning that I have everything. There's people who are in neighborhoods that are stuffed with people and you can't get down the street and there's no parking in the street. Look, I'm not interested in that. That was never my dream. I know people sometimes thrive on this. We lived in New York City for a year. We had an apartment. It was very difficult to be in New York. So the first class moments in New York, it's very hard to get those moments in those places where there's nobody in a city of 8 million. But I found them, right? The stairwells, right there. I would use stairwells in buildings. When there were elevators, sometimes those were overlooked. Or not the most popular parts of the building. You know, I talk about buildings because space is at a premium when you're in New York City. So where's the first class? Well, could you get a space that nobody else was that interested in because it wasn't located in the right spot, or it maybe had a garbage can next to it? Or could you make that space better? Maybe it was, we had an abandoned apartment actually above us, And the landlord did not care if I went up there and made videos. This was my own private set in the middle of Manhattan. Nobody was there but me. See, if you're in the present moment and you're looking for opportunity, it's there. It's there. So these inklings of what should I do are all kind of related to what my overall goal is. So we talked about that storage unit thing, right? By the way, when you're in storage units, my family hated the fucking storage unit, right? Because it was hot and it was garage doors and there's nothing around. But it was peaceful. It was peaceful. You could seek out. You could think about shit. Pushing your little cart of stuff down the hall, you would think about, what else do I want in life? Well, I'm here. I made it. I'm in the storage unit with nobody here. I'm in a first class situation again. There's 1,000 units and I'm the only one in here right now. This is kind of where I think when you're in a world of high population, high demand, millions of vehicles on the streets, people fighting for resources, right? We see this. Can you carve out a small spot? Now, don't get too comfortable. Don't get too comfortable. Be okay to leave it. You have to be, I found it, I used it, goodbye. That's not easy, because sometimes it takes a lot of work, and then to give something up, it shows strength though, right? I have left things that I love. I don't always leave things that I hate. Sometimes I leave something that I love because I know I want to seek something else that's going to be a new experience. Might not love it as much, but might love it in another unique way. Okay? So the other inkling, and I have them written down here, is, again, my daughter, who's the one that's really my only kid that I discuss my business with. She's the same kind of mindset that I have, right? Write it down, Dad. Why don't you write some stuff down, right? You are the youngest person in your neighborhood. Talk about that a little bit. Well, youngest person in your neighborhood is scarce. It's hard to find. Where else do you get that? If I'm the youngest person in my neighborhood, that's also a form of first class. Everybody wants to be young. I want to be younger than I am. And the only reason is because it's not that I don't like my age. I would love to be able to have the information that I have now and have used it better when I was younger. But that's never going to help. It's never going to happen. So don't even think about it. So when you're younger than everybody else, people are going to be, they're going to be jealous of you. I know this. There's jealousy on almost every aspect of humanity, right? And jealousy is something that can be used. If you decide that you're bothered by someone who's younger and you don't have that, it wakes you up and says, well, what do you have? How do I turn this around? How do I use the negative emotion of jealousy and spin it and say, yes, but I also have life still. I have life. I'm alive, right? And I am alive. I'm alive right now. My mother's 82. I thought about her this morning because she's flying to Idaho. She's 82, flying to Idaho, still out there, still alive, still functioning. It's a ball bust to fly to Idaho, and why would she want to? She's gonna do this, and she's capable, and she's not younger than me. What am I jealous of here? Am I jealous of something here? No, she's motivating, right? It's not jealousy, it's motivation, because you could still do it. I can do this. I can do what this 82-year-old person is doing. I'm 61. I can do this. We just had a little hiccup. The camera automatically stopped. I forgot about that. We haven't used this camera in the podcast in a long time, but it's a camera that stops after 30 minutes. Just another hiccup on our first podcast in a while. So I was talking about my mother, right, doing this amazing thing. I think it's amazing. I think that people, I'm the youngest here in a group of people that are much older, but they're surviving, folks. They're out there. Sometimes they will go in the pool, and I joke about it. I'm like, it's like Cocoon, right? I'm the old, you got a bunch of old people in there with one young Steve Guttenberg, and they're trying to go backwards, and they pop out of the pool, and they're young kids again. But the pool does that, by the way. So I think that's why they use the pool. Never have done any research on Cocoon, the movie, if you've never seen it. It's probably an 80s movie. But people go into a pool, they come out, and they're younger, or are they younger at heart? Doesn't really matter. See, and that's what the movie tried to show. Because these old people eventually go back to being old, and they are actually happy being old. I think that's the concept of the story. But they're young at heart. Keeping the sense, which your brain can help you with. Your brain is what, I think it's your brain. I don't think it's anything else, right? It's got to be the brain that's making you realize who you are, what you think about. The brain ages too, but not like we don't even know anything about the brain aging. I have no idea. There's no outward look of the brain. The brain doesn't start wearing more conservative clothes. The brain doesn't start going to, the 55 and older communities. The brain doesn't go out for the early bird special. The brain on its own could never be judged as old. You couldn't really tell unless it had major age on it. I think a brain that looks like it's 20, a 21-year-old brain, like, I'm not a scientist, and I'm trying to put this in a way where the people who are going to debate me on this already got that in my head. I know there's a bunch of scientists watching this podcast. I know there's a bunch of people who are listening to this that know shit about the brain. They're going, he doesn't know crap about the brain. I know I don't know nothing about the brain. I wasn't trying to say I do. I'm guessing that the brain at 21 looks pretty close to the brain at 80, right? No wrinkles, right? Same amount of hair, none. There's no outward obvious. If you could completely disguise yourself through surgeries or whatever it is, pills, and still look like Rob Lowe. Because how does Rob Lowe do it? He's 60, I think he's 60, right? And he still looks better than as a kid. So if you could do the Rob Lowe thing, and people go, I don't know how old that guy is, there would be very little way to tell this person's age until they started speaking or, acting or competing, whatever. Maybe you could even keep the physicality. What if you were strong and as aesthetically pleasing as you were when you were younger as you were older? Could you imagine? No one could tell the young from the old. I don't think that's a good thing, by the way. I don't. And that's probably why it doesn't happen. I'm sure the great designers have decided this is not the way it's got to be. We must make the old people look old and then label them as old and make sure we stay away from them and don't adopt their thoughts and don't get near them. Because the old really is, and the word probably, I wonder where that word came from. Because was it an old way? The old way and the old people and the old everything means just degradation. It doesn't mean death. Old means it's been there a long time. And you, I guess, can make something continue to move and be old, or you can have something that doesn't move at all and is old, stagnant. Keep moving. Keep moving. This is the most unscientific examination of humanity that you'll ever listen to. But I think I'm right on point. Don't ask me how. So, my other inkling, let's move off. I really didn't get into how young I am in this neighborhood. But I see that we're running out of time here. We're running out of time because I'm starting to sweat. See, the beads are coming down. My face is starting to get hot. And I got to drive to West Palm Beach and Key West today. So, the last thing I'll bring up is I've been reading the Elon Musk book. We bought it for my son, and he's not reading it. Now this is like the pool. We got the pool for the family, and then no one was going in it. So dad, if you're not a dad, if you're a new dad, what dads are or cleanup. Dad will use the pool. Dad will eat your leftovers at Carrabba's. Dad will read the books that you don't, because Dad paid for all the shit. You understand? So Dad doesn't want to waste. Dad doesn't have a lot of stuff for himself in some situations because he sacrificed for his kids, but he knows how to maximize the stuff to get the most potential out of it. So if I read the book, it wasn't a waste. So I started reading the book. Plus I had this little inkling about Elon lately. Thinking about Elon. I've never been that interested in him. You know, he's been around for the last 20 some years, very popular. I haven't been paying attention. Kind of like what I did to Michael Jordan. I should have watched more Jordan basketball games. I should have went to an AC/DC concert when they were in their prime. See, all the things that were available to me as a younger person are not available to me as an older person. And so if they woke me up 200 years after my death and said, what should you have done, you know, now that you thought about it? These are the things that that I would say that I'm thinking about while I'm alive. I'm thinking about this before it's too late. So we're going to go see Def Leppard. I know it might be too late, but we're going to go see him. We just went to see Billy Joel. It wasn't too late. It wasn't too late. And I'm going to be interested now in Elon Musk as much as I can, right? So far, so good. And thinking about what he's been able to do with the rockets, to bring the rocket back to Earth, the booster alone, just watching the booster come back to Earth and saying, didn't we think about that before? We just let a lot of crap float into space and wasted it? This guy must have been a father. You know, dads don't waste shit. So he is a dad. I think he's got 10 kids as I'm reading the book. So he brings the booster back to Earth and gets to use it over again. And nobody's doing this. And then he's flying rockets as a private person, not like shit rockets, not like elementary school rockets. The guy's building rockets, major rockets, and sending them off and using NASA as the launch. Who knew that we could go ask NASA for permission to launch our own rockets? I mean, you got to be somebody very special, and that doesn't stay in that same neighborhood and walk that same path. He's got strings going everywhere. This man has expanded his life and his horizon and is doing, all his inklings are monstrous. My inklings were little raindrops, you know, that I possibly did or did not follow. A lot of them hit the ground and evaporated, but his are waterfalls that he's followed through all the way down the falls, down the stream, down the river, into the ocean, and he owns the damn thing. He owns the oceans. So I'm reading his book because I want the inspiration. I want to think about, you didn't do shit, Carm. Why don't you do more? This guy, right? He's a man. So I'm living through the Elon Musk period just like you are. And are you paying attention to it? You're not going to say in 20 years, this guy was around and now he's not. When I was a kid and I never paid attention. That's just something I have to suffer with, you know. So I'm reading a book. It's a big, thick book with a fancy cover on it. I took the cover off because, do you ever read a hardback and you want to keep that pretty glossy cover on, that paper cover, but you could rip it? when I'm done with the book, I want to put the cover back on, put it up there, keep it pretty. Keep it pretty, that's what I'm saying. I'm only on page 8. It's got like 500, maybe an 800 page book. It's big, it's a big book. But I had an inkling to read the Adam Carolla book, and I had an inkling to read the Jordan Peterson book. So all these inklings have to now be, I got to do them all. So I'm going to focus on the one book for now. I'm going to try to get that Elon Musk book a little further ahead, get a little more into it. And then here's my other mistake, which, my God, it's just so, I'm tying these things together. I'm sure other people can do it, but right now you're seeing this happening with me, okay? The book, as you're reading it, is the job. That's the job. It's not to finish the book. See, I always think it's to finish the book, like it's some type of competition. Oh, I'm on page this, or I'm on page that, or I'm almost done. No, when you're in the book, and you're reading the book, in the moment of the book. That's the job. It's not to get done with it, hang it up, and go read Jordan Peterson. It's to, did you get what you wanted from this book while you're reading the book? You're not trying to get to the next chapter just to make a mark in the bookmark, right? A milestone. Oh, look, I'm on chapter. That happens. It's so weird that I treat the book as a competition. I am not racing against anyone else. There's not like 9 of us reading the Elon Musk book together and seeing who gets ahead quicker. It's not Top Chef or Iron Chef or Naked and Afraid. It's not a competition. Is Naked and Afraid a competition? It's not a competition. But when you're brought up being told you have to read faster, get through it, because they had that at home course that you could buy. I forgot the name. Evelyn Wood's speed reading. Sometimes you get lost in this is it. You're in this moment. You had an inkling to read the book while you're there, enjoy it. And then when you're done, by the way, put it on the shelf, just like the big house, just like your private pool, just like anything that you have to give up now and move on to the next thing. How can you wrap up a podcast better than that?